Hey there. By some twisted turn of unfortunate events, you have landed here on episode 8 of A Thompson and Other Disappointments. The world and tech are changing, and with things like virtual reality and Elon Musk's brain chips, the way that we get information into our brains is maturing. So, in a world without traditional screens, I thought it might be interesting to ask someone with a cleverer mind than mine how people are going to consume information in this new world. So who better to explain how users are going to experience things than the head of user experience at Future Workshops in London? So the preceding hour was a fun time. We talked about everything from serendipity to imposter syndrome to why I should wear a nappy. So please give a like, a share, a comment for this week's guest, the inspiring and wonderful Jenny Grinblo. Jenny, how's it going?
Hi, Adrian.
Hi.
It's going super great.
Good.
I'm so excited to have had the opportunity to dress up and brush my hair for someone else besides myself.
It's something of a novelty these days, isn't it?
Yeah, I just realized I live with my husband too, and somehow that didn't seem to be enough of a motivation.
Oh,
So
poor guy. Never
he's
mind.
all right.
Yeah. And the background there is looking pretty snazzy.
Thank you.
We've kind of touched on this a minute ago, just first chatting. That it kind of looks a little bit dystopian, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean it's no room padded with aluminum foil or anything, but it's just it's just one of the Skype options that seem to have spoken to me the most
Yeah.
in terms of the the warmth of the color scheme of my own lighting situation.
Yeah.
So as a designer, you get really annoyed with most wallpapers because your face ends up being yellower or bluer than the background, and
Yeah.
you're just never happy.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about your background and stuff. So you and I kind of got chatting on Twitter, and I noticed that you were deep in the UX game, and I work in
Yeah.
web development, and I thought I've never really spoken to anyone at length about UX, and some of the people that listen to this podcast are going to be like, I don't even know what the fuck UX is.
Yeah.
So let's start with the beginnings of your career, and then we can kind of go a little bit deeper into UX, and then maybe we'll touch on what the future of UX looks like. So let's start like right back at the beginning. So UX as a discipline, as an industry, I suppose has not actually been around that long. So when you were at school and they asked you what you wanted to be when you grow up, what did you say?
Yeah, I definitely didn't say I wanted to be a UX designer. I knew I wanted to be a designer pretty early on.
Mm,
Um, Basically, from around 12, um, I was really into, and still am, into puppies and photos of puppies.
awesome.
However, back then I was also really interested in the band NSYNC. Are you aware of them?
Am I? I mean, right behind all of this foil here, just poster after poster.
All right. Well, who's your favorite member?
Uh,
Exactly.
it's too easy to say Timberlake, isn't it?
So back
Yeah.
then, I was living in Israel, where my family still is, and I was really interested in puppies and NSYNC. And for some odd reason, I mean, I guess we got the computer in the house, in the corner that connected to the internet with loud noises, and I was allowed an hour on it a day.
Yeah.
No, not a day, a week. Gosh, an hour a day would have been a dream.
A week.
And yeah, and I asked my dad, there's all these websites.
Mm,
I want to make a website about dogs and NSYNC, as you
cool.
do. So
Niche market.
absolutely. So my dad said to me, and this is kind of the relationship that we have, and one that I hope to have with my children. He said to me, "Do you know what? I know fuck all about websites, but let's learn together."
Fair. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty solid fathering there.
Yeah. So every Friday, we would sit down together and we would look up. I don't even know if we Googled it. I don't know that there was Google back
Like
then.
Lycos
Who
or
knows?
something. Yahoo.
Something. We'd look up how to build websites, and we'd look up HTML, and CSS wasn't even. I think we just used tables. And I'd sit in Photoshop and make a whole page, like the whole entire page, and cut it up and chuck it into a table.
Yeah.
And we learned to code it from scratch together.
Wow.
Which, as a child, you can imagine there's just no instant gratification moment
Yeah.
in learning HTML from scratch. But eventually we did get a page up. I think we used something like GeoCities or something like that. And it just felt so magical. It's like, I can't believe I decide what to write on this thing and how it should look. And little by little, I started getting into these online communities where, because as a child, you can't afford hosting.
Yeah.
Obviously. So I remember there were these online communities that would allow you to use their extra hosting, and they would give you a subdomain on their hosting account, and you had to get in, you had to apply. So I got into one called, I think it was like Pixel Effects. And one of the requirements was that you change your web page layout every week or every month. Had to be different.
Fuck. Yeah.
Be a different theme. So it was like a serious business.
Yeah.
But I felt so cool, just knowing that you can do something like that. And of course you want to get better. So you start researching.
Yeah.
And so I'd play around with Photoshop loads. And little by little, my parents would talk about it, and people would come and say, "Oh, can your daughter do like a poster for me?" Or my first ever paid thing was my mom's friend wanted to celebrate her anniversary with her husband by having a calendar.
Yeah.
Do you need to?
Yeah, can you hear that? I thought I had like audio limiting set up where.
No, it's good. So little by little, I started getting these little jobs, and people would pay me like 20 quid to do a whole entire 12 months of a calendar with their photos. And obviously you spend so much time trying to make it great. And I started getting projects really early on. I mean, I think I was about 14 when I worked with a company designing their trucks, and they are so horrible and so ugly, and they're still roaming around the roads of Israel.
Really?
Yes. Back then, I also didn't know that you had to give instructions to people about how to install your designs. So some of them are like backwards, and there's just, most people don't have their portfolios just riding along them sometimes on the road. And I think that's a blessing. But long story short, back then, I started noticing then that some websites were better than others.
Sure.
And I also started noticing that communication was really important, because I'd get a lot of projects wrong in terms of what people wanted. Getting paid still apparently is not easy for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a whole other thing. And my dad and I would have all these conversations about how do we prioritize what's on the screen, and how do we make sure it's clear, and how do we make sure that other people besides me enjoy this puppy Justin Timberlake website.
Sure.
So I think that for me was really the time when I started understanding what are, I would say, the building blocks of user experience. So really thinking about your audience, thinking about making content make sense, making interactions make sense. And I found recently this thing, which now we call a wireframe. It's basically just a black and white sketch, where my dad told me, you have to plan what you're going to put on this layout first, and then you do it in color. And I mean, I keep telling him he's a UX designer just by accident. And then I went to study other things, because I come from a background where we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. So the options were like, go study something that, that's going to make you money, that you don't have to worry about all the time. And instead of listening to my parents, I did a degree in sociology. That terrified them.
Yeah.
But it meant that I learned to really study people in a scientific way, and understand behavior, and understand patterns. And when I was about to graduate, I had no clue what I wanted to do, because I had the opportunity to continue in academia.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to start looking for work. I kept doing freelance design work in the background, so I could go and, try out for graphic design jobs. And I was really lucky. I met a chap named John who had his own company, and he came to uni, and he was like, I started my own company, asked me questions. And I went up to him and I said, I love to study people, I love to write, and I love doing graphic design. I have no clue what I should do. Which one should I pick? And he said, you shouldn't pick any of them. You should be a UX designer.
Oh, okay.
And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, there's this job where you have to figure out how things should work, and you have to think about the tone of voice, and you have to think about the steps that people have to take and how to make it easy to use
Yeah.
and talk to people and do design as well. And I was like, hold on, people will pay me to do this? Because are you sure this isn't just, I thought he was making it up. I mean, it sounded too good to be true.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty cool that
And
it's
yeah,
so you kind of landed at a point where all of these things, almost by luck or chance, all kind of slotted into the right role for you.
absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely luck and chance. I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's my career has been all about trying to put yourself out there as much as you can because, there wasn't sort of nowadays we have really cool opportunities for folks. We have the likes of General Assembly and we have the likes of Ironhack that help people train in UX and UI and development as well. And you say UX is new. It's got a lot of founding fathers and mothers and folks of other genders
Mm,
from human computer interaction, and people have been thinking about how machines should work for a long time.
mm.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have gone to the moon and such. But I think the really exciting and lucky period for me has been how all of that knowledge and thinking relates to digital.
Right. Yeah.
And I went to uni a few years after Facebook blew up. So, I mean, it was really early days in terms of social media. I mean, we still had MySpace and High Five and DeviantArt and things like that. And
Bebo
um,
and Friendster.
never got into Bebo. Is that a UK thing?
It might be, yeah. I think it was sold to one of the big. It might have been sold to Google actually. Um, I forget now. I never had a Bebo account, but I remember it
Okay.
with like Bebo and Friendster were around, like
Yeah.
also just before Facebook blew up, I think. And then before that, it
Yeah.
was like Friends Reunited. That was it. But
Mm.
anyway, sorry,
So,
carry
I
on.
mean, no, nowadays, social media platforms get a lot of flack, and I think for some good reasons. I mean, we're just after a really turbulent election, and there's all of that. But for me, it was absolutely magical to be able to graduate from uni in Minnesota,
Mm,
connect with people all over the world who were doing UX and talk to them, go to Israel, find a company in London on Twitter that,
really?
yeah, that was willing to interview me, do my interview on Skype,
Yeah.
and then move to London for the job. I mean, it was incredible for me. And I wouldn't have been able to do any of that had it not been for the internet and social media. So, yes, absolutely, I got really lucky. But it also took about 9 months of just reading every book I could and listening to every podcast that I could about this magical UX world because I didn't know what it would take. There was no degree, there was no,
Mm,
you know, all you could do is really find people and chat with them and try to do your best. And I ended up doing a project with a competition that Nokia ran that year
mm.
it was called Apps to Empower Women.
Cool.
And I did a personal project about an app that would help alert you to sexual assault and rape content in media.
Right.
So the idea was that if you were someone that had experienced that and you wanted to avoid those kind of moments in movies and TV, you could go in the app
Right.
and look them up beforehand. And I was really lucky. They thought it was a good idea. It got some kind of recognition. And through that project and just posting it online, that's how the company where I work at now, Future Workshops, their
Mm,
CTO saw me on Twitter. Um, so it was just weird. But also, I think at that time, I just tried to shove myself into every conversation
yeah.
that I could in the field, just trying to make connections and figure out how to get in to this industry.
Yeah.
So got super lucky.
Amazing. Yeah, it's quite a story. Do you think that sort of like those sliding doors moments are like maybe there's a I'm just trying to think of a nice way to kind of phrase this, but like I know how I feel about my background and how I got into coding. And I always knee jerk into this kind of mentality where I'm just like, I'm so lucky that I just met this person, then that person, and then this thing sprung up. And then actually,
Yeah.
when I examine it, I'm like, well, no, hang on a second. I did work really fucking hard. Like, it's
Yeah.
not all just, oh, yeah, the right thing fell in my lap. And it sounds like it's actually very similar to you. Like, you're being very modest when you say, I met this guy and then, this kind of came along. But I mean, it sounds also like you really put the work in. You read everything about UX. You prepped. You were networking over Twitter and so on, right?
I mean, I think it's a balance. I think we always have to be really mindful of balancing imposter syndrome and privilege.
Mm,
I mean, I went to a world-class university for free with a scholarship, and I got a degree
mm,
that a lot of people don't have. And I was able to learn English because my parents invested money in me doing tutoring, and my dad had time and desire and the education to help me
mm.
learn the basics of what I do. So from that perspective, all those things are very lucky things that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
On the other hand, yes, there was an element of effort. I didn't, sit at home and take a nap and then someone knocked on my door. I had to go and knock on the doors myself, and plenty of doors shut in my face and said, you don't have enough experience,
Yeah.
or, wouldn't even talk to me. So I think it's definitely a case of making your luck work for you.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that have helped me along the way. And I love to think that I can help other people along the way too. And we've been able to do that at Future Workshops where I work now. I mean, I can't even believe that I get to say this, but I'm now the head of the UX and design department in the company that hired me after I admitted I didn't even have an iPhone, and they asked me what my favorite app was. Um, and we've um, made the point to hire people who have just retrained or have just changed career
That's great. Yeah.
and don't have that experience. They have miles more than I did when I got hired. I always make a joke that I wouldn't have hired myself probably.
Yeah.
But I think if you can be aware of how lucky you have been, then that degree of modesty can help you to pass it on. Because I think if you get into the trap of thinking, oh yeah, absolutely, I did this all myself,
Yeah.
then you can become a bit of a douchebag, and nobody wants that. So
True. True. Yeah. I'm a big fan of like, speaking of being douchebags, like it sounds pretentious as fuck when I say this, but I'm a big fan of like that paying it forward thing. So I
yeah,
feel personally very, very fortunate that my director, when I was at Sky, I was working in projects, and he pulled me into a room and just said, what do you actually want to do here? And I said, at that time, I was like, well, I'm editing video for comedians and stuff. Maybe something in digital content, doing, like, I knew my way around the Adobe suite, so I thought, yeah, that would be cool. Like, the idea of being a professional video editor actually really, like, rang my bell. I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Can I do that? And he was like, well, I don't really know anyone in digital content, so do you want to be a developer? And I was like, well, maybe. And
all right then.
yeah, and I was kind of not railroaded into it, but like, it was his suggestion. He had influence in that area, and I said, I'm not very mathematical, and I was, what was I then, 34, 35. So also in that kind of retraining category, and I was thinking, like, I like, developers are like my brother. Like, he's super geeky. Like, he was the archetypal kind of geek guy growing up. Like, he was into Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica, and he wore like a. You mentioned Nokia earlier. He had like a Nokia mobile phone, like, hooked over his belt.
Yeah, I did too.
Right.
Dude, I met my first boyfriend in IRC chat. I don't know, you're barking up the wrong tree
I
here.
have no idea what that is.
Well, there you go.
Is that something that my brother would
IRC
know?
chat
Or
fans, get in touch on Twitter. Adrian needs to find out
please
about this.
educate me. Um, but yeah, so I just assumed that, like, that's what programmers look like. Is my brother.
Right.
So anyway, then this director was like, just have a chat with this engineer, have a coffee. He'll talk you through, like, what web development is, and if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, but just have a
Yeah.
chat with him. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So it just kind of snowballed from there, really, and I now think what am I, 5 years on, 6 years on from that. um I'm like, that was super fortunate, and it's really great that he saw something where he thought this guy could do more than
Yeah.
just timesheet planning and
Yeah.
swim lane reports and stuff. And so now I'm
Yeah.
like, look, if somebody wants to learn how to do what I do, then Thursday night 7:30, like, we jump on Skype, we go through what we did last week. We then they spend like the rest of the week pushing code, and then I check it again the next Thursday. And
Yeah.
any kind of opportunity that I have to put someone on a similar trajectory as I've been able to benefit from, because like
Yeah.
from my perspective, I'm sure like a lot of the career movers that you interview, I feel like it's changed my life. I'm like, I wish I'd done it like 10 years earlier, 12 years earlier, but
Absolutely. But see, for him to have noticed you,
mm,
this is what I really want to pay attention to. I went to this really amazing lecture on happiness
mm,
a few years back, and they were talking about predictors of happiness and things that give us true, deep happiness in life.
mm,
And they were saying that the number one thing is doing things for other people, acts of service.
mm,
But they had a really strong caveat, which is that you only benefit from them yourself, and they're truly meaningful if they cause you some pain, if it's effort. So if you do stuff that's kind of like, oh, I'm already here, yeah, whatever, doesn't cost me anything,
mm,
that's not really what service to someone is.
right,
You have to go out of your way a little bit. And I think this is what I've learned is the hardest part of being in a position where you can do things for people is actually showing up and doing it even when you don't want to,
mm,
or when you can't, or you feel horrible that day or something happened at home. You have to show up. It's not enough to just hire someone and say, "You're so lucky I've given you this opportunity.
yeah,
Now just sink or swim." You have to really make time. I mean, as a parent, you know this. Showing up is 90%, right?
yeah, yeah, there is
And
that.
so,
And I often like, I mean, I assume that actually the reason that he gave me that opportunity was like one of two things. Like there's this sort of like faint faded third possibility, which is he saw something in me that he wanted to encourage and see it flourish. But
right,
I that
the other
yeah,
two.
the other two, number one is that I was such a god awful fucking project analyst that he was fed up of me making mistakes and costing him money, like tens of thousands of pounds. And he was
Right.
like, we got to get this guy out of here.
What's the other one?
And the other one was, wait, hold on.
Oh,
I've got
are you having a brain fart?
yeah, memory blank. Hold on,
Were they both negative?
yes, yeah. But
Cool.
it's like the sort of cool. It's like the sort of imposter syndrome thing where it's like
Oh,
your
absolutely.
go-to
And it's a
thing.
disservice to you and to him. I
Yeah,
mean, if I were him and I heard this, I'd be livid. I'd be like, fuck you. Like, I was a great
but
mentor.
it's like, wait, no, oh, it just came back to my head and it's fucked off again. Wait,
Should I guess? You were really smelly.
no, oh no, no,
No.
wait. I mean, that's a great guess. I probably was, but no, I wondered if maybe it was something to do with his like targets and goals. I mean, you're head of UX. You're
All right.
probably targeted on like I don't know, diversity hires, promotions, and that sort of stuff. Maybe he was targeted, and there was some sort of objective that he has to demonstrate that he has helped progress someone, or it's like a nice story to tell in
Right.
his annual appraisal to go, well, look, this guy
You're so
never,
cynical. You're hurting my heart.
but
You're hurting my heart. Can I defend my targets as well? Because you've just like shat all over my targets. Yes, I have to hire one person who don't look like me per year.
yeah,
No, we're not that big a company. We're just about 40 people, and I work really closely with our CEO. Um, uh, on paper, I should say, he sets my targets.
right,
Let's go with that.
yeah,
I think targets are maybe definitely a word that I would expect to hear from a place like Sky.
yeah,
Yes, it's important for us to have these things, but I think ultimately what I found, and I found this from my own experience, but also doing qualitative interviews with folks who work in other organizations like banks and so on, there's only so much that your external targets are going to do to motivate you to behave every single day. I think people follow the actions that speak to their own values.
Mm.
And I don't know the person who helped you have a magical career transition,
Yeah.
but in our company we say always assume the best intentions, and that's what I'm going to choose to do. I'm going to choose to believe that you were wonderful in some capacity and that he truly wanted to lend a hand.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I'm not saying this to be disrespectful to him. I'm eternally grateful to him for giving me the opportunity. It's just, it's that sort of imposter syndrome thing where you just think like, there's got like, there's got to be some reason why he like
okay,
helped.
but let's turn it on its head in a way that maybe will speak to your personality. And I've just met you, but I'm just going to go and assume that this could work. Let's turn this on its head.
All right.
Have you not worked with just a mind-blowing amount of incompetent people?
Yeah.
Right. So statistically speaking, considering you're doing well now,
Yeah.
there's a realistic possibility that you didn't suck at what you did that much.
Possibly. Yeah. And I think it's also a case of like when you make a mistake at work, you feel like the world is ending, like you're the biggest moron
Yeah.
on the planet, and everyone knows you've been figured out that
Yeah.
you are like, you're making everyone's life harder. Why don't you just fuck off?
Yeah.
Like that's honest. That's how it's so visceral. Um, but to everyone else, it's like yeah, well, it's fine. Just
Everyone
fix
else
it.
is like, I don't know what mistake you made because I was busy berating myself. And by the
Yeah,
way, this thing that you're talking about is super, super British too. Like my husband's British. You can hear from my accent, I wasn't born here. I have a passport now, so I have to say please and thank you and stand in a queue.
sure.
But my husband feels like he's imposing on everyone all the time. Like we're walking down the street and he'll move me and he'll be like, let's go to the side of the pavement because I can see behind us the faint shadow of someone that may come up and needs space to walk to the right of you.
Yeah,
And I'm like, um, all right. So I think imposter syndrome is definitely an element of what we do. But I think here in this culture specifically too, there's an apologetic sort of like I shouldn't even exist mentality
yeah, yeah.
around a lot of things, and that compounds the imposter syndrome even more.
Yeah, I've heard. I used to do a lot of comedy, and I remember there was a stand up, and she said that when she first moved to the UK, the thing she was struck by was how often Brits apologise.
Oh my God.
She was like, it's
Yes.
constant, it's never ending. You're always so sorry. Everything. It's like, oh, sorry, sorry, sorry. Like,
Yeah.
and it's, I don't know why it sort of stuck with me. I suppose because I've never noticed it because I am British. But was that your kind of take on it as well? You were like, everyone here is so
Oh my
sorry.
God. So I don't know if you've met a lot of Israelis, but
A few.
we're like the cardinal opposite of Brits when it comes to manners. So much so that when we were getting married in Israel, one of our friends was coming over and had bought a book about the Israeli culture. And the book said, please be mindful that Israeli people are extremely rude. Now, it's not true, right? I mean, rude is a very subjective term,
Right.
but from the perspective of a British person, we ask personal questions, we talk over you, we don't say please, thank you, or apologize. We put stuff in your plate.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on. So imagine putting Dan, my husband, and me in the same room, and I go, pass me the remote.
Yeah.
And he goes, excuse me. And I go, what? And he's like, you should say please. And I go, you don't work in a bank. I don't have to say please to you. You're my husband.
See, hearing this stuff
And
makes me
so,
think, man, I was born in the wrong fucking country. I should.
oh yeah. I mean, it's so different that the first time we went back to Israel for him to visit, we were on the train and somebody overheard us speaking English. So they turned around to him and they were like, hello, where are you from? Oh, Britain, it's so exciting. You like Israel? Where are you going? It's your wife and her family. And it's like, oh my God. And just the whole time. And then we got off the train, went to get ice cream, and people are like, oh, is this your first time? What ice cream do you like? Where are you from? What town? Where? It is just like you get to know people so
Yeah.
fast. And it's just not done here. I mean, I recently made the decision. This is how I knew I was truly deserving of my passport. I had the decision to go on a lift,
Mm.
knowing that there would be another person
Hmm.
there, and I let it go and I waited
Yeah.
so I could be on the lift by myself. God forbid for me to make eye contact
Yeah.
or say hello to someone
Yeah.
that, right? So it's completely opposite. And we used to have this conversation where I would say stop, he'd say sorry, and I'd say stop saying sorry, and he'd say sorry, I said sorry. It was literally like
Yeah.
a never-ending cycle.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because it's like,
But
it's
yeah.
sort of a bit paradoxical in the way that we're always so sorry, endlessly apologizing, and we keep things bottled up. We like to be polite, etc. And yet, also, I've read a Lonely Planet guide that was, I think it was an Aussie housemate, or it might have been a Kiwi. Someone was coming over with it, and the page in London, or the page about London, said specifically, don't be offended by the customer service. That's just the culture there. I was like, is it
What?
like maybe it was written by an American? I don't know, because customer service in the US is like,
You know what that could be? Customer service in the US. They should go to Russia.
is it
My
is it
mom
bad or
my
good?
mom wanted to try a lipstick and they were like, "What are you doing? You have to buy that. Get out of here." No, yeah, definitely. I think I read that customer service, as we call it, good customer service, so American customer service, comes from the perception that society is stratified and some people are below you and they have to serve you. So you are in a superior position when you're the customer. So they have to change their demeanor and they have to take it when you say something they don't
Yeah.
like and all of that. And that's what some cultures call good customer service. Whereas in other countries, like Russia, I assume because of the background of communism, I noticed this in the
Yeah.
Netherlands. People treat you like peers. They're not there to serve you. They just happen to be working
Yeah,
there.
it's like a sort of
And
partnership, like client supplier kind of
that's
thing.
it. So you have to bring something to the table. They're not going to just, lick your ass because you're the
I mean,
customer.
unless it's that kind of shop,
So
in which case,
that exists in the Netherlands also, yes. But, you know, I'm sure I'm sure there's a lot of clarity about how that interaction will go also.
yeah,
So I find that really interesting. So I wonder what the Australians and the Aussies the Australians and the Aussies, the Kiwis and the Aussies have in terms of, that kind of dynamic in society. I haven't been,
yeah.
so I'll
I've heard,
and
like, I
check it
haven't
out.
spent much time in France, but I've heard that French service is very similar to British. So it might just be like a sort of Western European kind of thing. I wonder if it's like in any way related to the weather. Like if it's just shit and rainy and everyone's pissed off and cold, and are you less likely to
Could
be
be.
like, hey, how can I help you and make your day better? I'm fucking frozen. I've been working for 15 hours.
Could be. But I mean, as I said, as a social scientist by training, I would go with dynamics of power over the weather any
Mm,
day. But that's just my bias.
sure. I mean, it kind of is a bias, I suppose, because if you're a student of sociology, you're thinking not necessarily about what's true, but what would make the better essay. Is that accurate?
Sure, let's
All
go with
right.
that.
So we've gone sort of off the beaten path a little bit, and I wondered if maybe we could talk a little bit about like the future of UX, because my understanding of user experience is like when someone says UX to me, in my mind immediately I'm thinking of screens. I'm thinking of like
Sure,
my laptop and like what I'm flicking and scrolling down on my phone, and
sure.
but in the next like 5 or 10 years, that's going to change massively. It's going to be, I mean, there's predictions that screens will actually begin to fade out and everything will be like voice activated. And you'll have like
Mm,
if it's not like an Elon chip in your head, like you might have like a little
mm,
hearing aid type thing that just says the information to you, kind of thing. So,
sure.
where do you see UX going in the next 5, 10 years?
Sure. I think it's very normal and typical for you to think that way. And I think a lot of us see things in terms of maybe 5 year increments because, we've grown up in a time where technology changes so
Mm,
rapidly. We spend so much time just trying to keep up with that. I remember, I mean, after I started my job, the iPad came out, the Apple Watch came out. Google tried to do Google Glass. That didn't go
Failed.
well. But now Apple is reportedly thinking about it. And by the way, that's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation. So it's normal for us to think, well, what have we seen around us? We've seen screens, and oh my goodness, when those go away, what are we going to do? But I think when we think back to this idea that folks have been around for decades figuring out how people should interact with inanimate
Mm.
objects, man-made objects, man-made
Mm.
services, things that we just put into society and expect to work, need either an instruction manual or someone really clever, it's just self-compliment, to figure out
Yeah.
how to make it easy enough that somebody can use it. Or both. I mean, if you have a nuclear reactor, you probably want to try and have both and cover all your
Sure.
bases. So when someone says, what are UX designers going to do, or what's the world of UX going to do when screens go away? It's less of a concern to me because the way that we think about designing experiences is from the perspective of what are you trying to achieve and what do you
Mm.
want? What do you need? And then the way that you do it is almost incidental. So you could do things in many different ways. If you're hungry, you can go to a supermarket, you can order Deliveroo,
Mm.
you can ask your husband to go for you, you can look in the back of your cupboard.
Yeah.
There are just so many options. You could go to your garden, right? So
But I suppose that
at
does
the
that
moment,
work with UX? Because I sort of feel like, okay, if you gave people a buffet of transport solutions and you said, okay, well, look, you could walk to the restaurant, you could catch a taxi to the restaurant, or you could fly in this new fucking rocket pack thing, everyone would go, I want to fly, give me the rocket pack. So if something comes along
sure.
like super amazing and fun and it's the sexy new tech on there where it is like, I don't know, broadcasting the information directly into your brain, is it like,
Absolutely.
does UX then take on a kind of like aural form where you're thinking, how do I make the requests and the yeah,
Absolutely. That's
right,
exactly it. I mean, are you an iPhone
yeah,
user? Cool. Have you tried asking Siri for stuff?
my son has, yeah,
How's that going?
yeah, very like patchy, off and on.
Yeah. So I have this conversation with my HomePod
Hmm.
Mini, the newest cutting edge technology from Apple, and I asked it to please play NSYNC's second album, and it said, "Sorry, Jenny, I can't find NSYNC on Apple
Mm.
Music." So then I said the name of the album, and it said "Playing Celebrity" by NSYNC, and I'm like, "You little twat!" I mean,
So judgy. Even now, a massive NSYNC
so
fan. I'm like, what? You haven't heard of the second album?
exactly. So somebody has to figure out how everything
Yeah.
works. And my dream in life, and often I get close to it because I work extremely closely with developers who are
Mm.
brilliant and wonderful. My dream in life is for the people building the tech to have the full capacity, time, and depth of understanding of all the ways that people can screw it up, get hurt in the
Mm.
process, lose their self esteem, and make a mess
Sure.
of it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we're not there yet. So somebody has to figure out how shit is going to work. And I think there's this kind of there's a lot of stereotypes. We talked about stereotypes of developers. Another stereotype that I hate is people are like developers are antisocial and they don't care about people. They don't care about users. They just want to
Mm.
code and they want people to suffer. And it's like, no, developers are people who spend many hours in front of a screen fighting bugs that God knows how they got there, trying to make very complicated things work, constantly having to learn new technologies and keep up with
Mm.
things. And when you go that deep into a field, you don't have the luxury to also, I mean, can you imagine as a developer running around interviewing people and thinking about the big picture and then going in and then going out? I mean, there just wouldn't be time in a
No.
day. And some people do work like that, and I admire those people. But I think at the moment it's beneficial to have folks whose job it is to sit there and think about what's the best way for this thing to interact with a human. And this thing can be a voice activated bubble that does know NSYNC's second album. I mean, I keep just coming back to NSYNC. I feel like I'm gonna get
It's
roasted for this,
obviously
but
on
it's
your
okay.
mind. I mean, we can talk NSYNC if you want.
With lockdown, you just have to go back to the things that make you
Yeah.
happy, and this is what makes me happy.
This is why
So
I'm not judging, like, because my Spotify is all. This is. I don't know why I'm admitting this on a podcast, but it's all like grunge rock stuff that I was listening to in like 1995. And there's a part of me is
I think we're all
like,
doing
what does this
that.
say about me? Have I not developed? Why am I listening to like teen angst rock stuff?
What I'm learning today is that you need to work on your self-esteem, Adrian.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm telling you this is because I go to therapy every week, and my therapist told me the same. So anyway, what I'm saying is, I think the mechanism that we use to get things
Mm.
done, as long as it's man-made, it's gonna need someone to figure it out. So I'm not worried about if it's a screen or it's not a screen. There's a big conversation about, and has been for years, about the service end to end. So you interact with a lot of people and things, and a lot of things have to work behind the scenes for something like an app to work.
Mm.
So designing the screen is not enough. We're talking about ethics a lot in the community, thankfully,
Mm.
because we're realizing that the things we build have an impact on human lives and the environment and politics. And suddenly we have to make it our problem, because we're not back in the day when it was enough to just build a web page and feel cool about yourself. You have to think about the lifetime of that thing and what impact it's going to have and how it's going to be sustainable. And there are a
Mm.
lot of hard questions. And I think the user experience field has a lot of jobs to fulfill and will do for a
Yeah.
long time. And as I said, it evolved from other fields that have existed for a long time. So it's not new, and I don't think it's gonna disappear, but it evolves all the time. And
Yeah.
maybe we call it something else in 5 or 10 years. I don't know.
Do you think so where screens kind of are retired to I mean, my personal take on it is that people will actually not give up screens as quickly as everyone anticipates.
I couldn't agree more.
Because like if you look at the advent of video calling,
Hmm.
everyone assumed that everyone would always like as soon as audio was the inferior, then people would go
Hmm.
to FaceTime the whole time. But as you and I and everyone knows, like there's, I mean, 95% of the time, you don't
People are
actually want
texting.
people to, yeah, you
We're
like,
basically sending telegrams now.
yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Like I never ever, maybe I'm broadcasting that I'm a terrible friend, but I never phone my friends. I'm just on chat groups. The only
Yeah.
people I phone is my mum and my dad, like once a week in lockdown
Yeah.
on Skype kind of thing. But
But at the same time, you're having a video conversation now because it serves a purpose for you in this moment. And I think this is the kind of point that I'm trying to make, is that we need to avoid the sensationalism of, oh, a new thing came out,
mm,
so we're going to drop everything and just do that one thing. People are multifaceted and complex, and we have a lot of needs. I mean, we're like very demanding as a species. We have a lot of things we need to do.
yeah,
I mean, look at your daughter. She's found a way to get back into your arms. She didn't need a screen for that.
no, that's true.
She's having a little eyelids heavy, arm
Maybe.
spaghetti.
I was hoping she might just kind of nod off in the pods there, but no such luck.
But she's just so excited by what Auntie Jenny has to say.
Absolutely. Well, you know, earlier when we were just like on the IM thing, and you were saying, you know, are you sure you don't want? Because we were talking about my son, you know, me trying to get him to go to sleep, and you were like, are you sure you don't want like a younger guest to join us? And I was like, well, you know, more on that in a minute.
Yeah,
So now we
exactly.
do, don't we? Yes, we do. I was gonna
Yes, we do.
I was going to touch a little bit on so like if we accept that people won't necessarily give up their screens as quickly as everyone is hyping, one of
Are
the
people hoping that?
I was saying like hyping, like I feel
Oh,
like
hyping. Sorry,
yeah,
accent barrier.
but I was thinking like VR is the exception to that almost, isn't it? Because it's like everyone's obsessed with this idea of, you know, oh, I'll put down my phone because I can just get the information straight into my ear or whatever.
Yeah.
But people, I think VR is kind of actually taking off finally. Like there was a long time where people were saying, "Oh yeah, this company is investing in it, that company," and then Google Glass wasn't really VR but kind of AR, and it felt very stop and starty. But now there's games consoles, there's like PlayStation adapters for it, there's the Oculus range.
Yep.
So I guess that kind of opens up another whole avenue.
Yep.
Right.
And just another way to have experiences. And my goodness, I'm glad that it's reached the level of maturity it has before lockdown, because a lot of people are enjoying that. We have a couple of friends who have a son. I think he's maybe 4 now. He's got his own mini VR headset. And it's hilarious
Wow.
because he literally doesn't know where he's going.
Yeah.
He's loving it. They have to limit his time. He's there, building things and cleaning things and walking into doors, and he's not realizing.
Yeah.
And it's obviously very exciting for him. And I think it gives us ever more so an opportunity to travel across time and travel across realities. The phone lines did that for distance.
Sure.
And then travel and print and all the other technologies we have, I think as a species, what we want to do is either preserve things so we can look back at them later and feel cool.
Yeah.
Or go into the future somehow. So it's all about manipulating those, natural conditions that we live in. And I think VR is just part of that.
Have you had a chance to mess with VR yourself, like to do some design on it at all? Or?
No, not do design on it, but I'll tell you, I'm shit scared of roller coasters in VR just as much as in real life. So I'll tell you that for free.
Yeah. I've not really, I bought a super cheap, like kind of basically a phone holder, like one of those things, you did like a helmet thing, you put your phone in it. And I thought it was all right, especially for something that only cost like 20 quid.
Yeah.
But I've not played on a like Oculus or anything. And I had the choice out of a PlayStation or an Oculus. And I haven't like done video games for 25 years or something. But, lockdown happened. I thought, well, I'll just get something to pass the time.
Yeah.
But I am, I ended up going for a PlayStation, but I am super, super keen to explore VR. Probably not from a development perspective, I don't think. Because like, there's talk about kind of JavaScript VR frameworks and stuff, but I sort of feel like if you're going to go into another world, it feels to me
JavaScript should not be in it.
Yeah.
No.
Probably not. But also, like from a technical standpoint, I mean, my understanding of gaming and game development is that most of it is written in like C++ and like heavy logic kind of languages, whereas JavaScript, as much as it tries to style itself and morph itself into something new every week, it's fundamentally a web language. I don't know. Doesn't feel like something that I should be dipping my foot in.
I mean, I would ask you the same thing that I ask anyone who says I want to learn a new tool or I want to build a new thing. It's like, what for? What, as I told you at the start, I didn't want to learn HTML to learn HTML. I wanted to do it to put pictures of puppies on the internet.
To solve a problem, yeah.
I don't even know if it was a problem. I was just really excited for it. And I think if you can find something like that the answer to it is VR, then you'll learn whatever you need to learn to make it happen.
Going back to your first exploration of HTML and your dad's attitude of like, well, let's learn it together. So is he still coding?
Yeah.
Is he? Great.
Unfortunately for the universe. No, I'm kidding. No, he is. He does, for a period of time, we actually built websites for people and got paid.
Cool.
And again, I mean, just leave the standards of the work we did to the side. But it was something he took on with a lot of enthusiasm, and he kept going when I went to uni.
Yeah. And
I'm really proud of him. He is a person who, I mean, he's an engineer, he's a mechanical engineer by trade.
Right.
So he's someone who looks at a problem, he analyzes it, he can learn new tools. He doesn't have that mental block of, oh, it's not my thing, or I'm not good at it, or anything like that.
Yeah.
He just looks at what's in front of him and he tries stuff until it works. He's not immune to imposter syndrome or getting annoyed or anything. He just got a Mac for the first time. I convinced him to get a Mac Mini
Cool.
M1.
Yep.
He's so excited. And he's having that thing where he doesn't know how to use a machine when he's so competent with computers.
Mm.
And he calls me and he's like, I'm so embarrassed, but I don't know how to open a blah, 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 or whatever it is. So he's human, but I admired that attitude of let's figure out what the problem is.
Yeah.
And then we figure out what tool to use. And I think I took a lot from that.
That's such a giant thing as well, isn't it? And I assume it's something that matures and endures throughout, like your journey, first learning HTML, but then into the UX arena. But it's like for me, when I was first learning to code, I felt overwhelmed and dumb
Yeah.
and like, oh, I don't know if I should be doing this, and then I got to this point where I was like, if I could just figure out how to do this, then I'll be good. And then I would learn that thing, and then I'd be like, if I could just figure out this next bit, then I'll know
Yeah.
how to do web development. And
Yeah.
it's
You
really,
kept moving the yardstick further.
yeah, but it's like a sort of like now I train people and mentor people, and it's you actually have to kind of drag them into that headspace where you say like, look, this is not something that you're going to learn and then you just know how to do it. This is something
Yes.
you're going to have to learn how to learn, and accept that you will always be
Yes.
learning this. You're never going to master it. It's just
Yeah.
like, what do I want to do here? Oh, I want to do a drop down, or I want to do a search bar, I want to do a gallery or something like that. Well, how
Yeah.
do I do that? Let's Google. Let's have a look.
Exactly. It's making the problem concrete.
Mm,
Building a drop down is a surmountable challenge. But becoming the amazing developer and person that I've always wanted to be, with the caveats of who learns things magically quickly and never doubts himself, and
yeah.
that's not a surmountable problem to solve.
No.
That's very unrealistic. And I always tell people that I actually find that the biggest crisis of faith, and I call it the valley of doom, comes not at the very beginning of your journey,
Mm,
but a little bit in when you build enough knowledge to know what you don't know,
mm,
and you realize how big the universe of your field is.
yeah.
And then, so your confidence level compared to your knowledge
Yeah.
suddenly has such a big gap. Because in the beginning, you're like, yeah, it's fine. I made a page.
Yeah.
I'll make another. And suddenly it's like, boom, here's everything that I don't know. You have to pass that stage. And a lot of people, I think, question themselves and give up then
Yeah.
rather than at the very beginning.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a sort of real strength in the ignorance is bliss kind of moment at the beginning where you're like, well, yeah, I'll just do this. The guys at work said I need to learn React. So off I go. I'll,
Yeah,
I'll do React for a bit. And
it's
then
fine.
somebody's like, yeah,
Probably learn.
can you,
Probably learn how to code for iOS too next week. It's not
yeah.
a problem.
Or then
Yep.
like, well, it was even more basic than that. It was like, for me, they were like, yeah, can you go away this weekend and then learn like CSS media queries? I'd be like,
Sure.
yeah, okay, cool. And then I'd come back. Whereas then you get a bit further down the line and you're like, oh shit, React is just like one planet in a solar
Yeah.
system of JavaScript frameworks. And like, what am I going to do when this planet dies? Like, I'm going to have to start again. Like, there's a real sort of fear there.
Yeah.
Um, and at some point, I will probably have to address it. But
But this to me is a great parallel to your question about screens.
mm,
I think when we tie our value and our skills to the tools we use or the activities we do or the outputs we produce, that's a really dangerous game to play.
mm,
Because if you define yourself as someone who codes in React.js or whatever it is, that's what being a developer is to you, then you're at a grave danger.
mm,
But if you're someone who writes code to build stuff on the internet,
yeah,
then suddenly that's a whole other comfort zone.
yeah, it's sort of the difference between, yes, I'm a React developer, please hire me, and what is it that you're looking to build? You want
Yeah.
a web app? Okay, cool. Do you want it to be installable on a phone, or like what is it for? Is it for internal, like inside the business? Is it for external? Have you thought about like it's but there's a confidence that that you only get installed in your brain to be able to be equipped to ask those questions that you develop after the first like 2 or 3 years of doing it, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Because you're just trying to survive in those few first years.
Yeah.
You're just learning what to Google.
Yeah. Well, also, like, when you're like, I was 35, I think I was about 35 when I was retraining, and I was petrified of fucking it up because I had a pretty cushy job, I think, in PMO. I could have just stayed doing that. Um, and I thought, what if I'm going to jump ship into this unknown world? What if I'm a
And
terrible
fail.
developer? They might, like, if Sky go through a rough time, because I'd worked in banks in the credit crunch, so I was very familiar with what businesses do. Sorry, my headphones are going to slide off here. Let me just, there we go.
You're doing great with the one-armed
Multitasking.
Well, zero arm even
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'd worked in banks and I'd seen how businesses operate when they go through a tough time. And, I was the guy that was in an HR room asking people to come down and see me at like 5 minutes past 1
Yeah.
for their chat, and then 15 minutes past for their chat. And
Yeah.
so I was just thinking, if Sky go through a rough time and, Netflix get bigger, which they did, and they need to fire people, let people go to save money quickly, who are they going to get rid of?
Because you're crap.
Yeah, like, I'll be the weakest thing. I'll be the expensive, because I was, a career move guy from, this level down to junior developer. It just, I don't know, it really, it worried me. And so it, in a positive kind of flip of that, it lit a fire under my arse where I was just like, I've got to fucking learn this. I can't fuck this up.
Yeah.
And then there was, so my 4-year-old was kind of on the way then. And so it was like, I'm a dad. I'm about to be a dad. I really need to sort my shit out.
You really have to sort it out. Yeah.
So yeah, there's an element of that. I want to pre-warn you that if you hear a fart or a burp, that is absolutely...
And you would have done a fantastic job with the bottle.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That's what we want, right?
Yeah. Are you going to ruin this
As
podcast?
my mom-in-law says, better out than in.
Yeah. Oh, she's still going. Okay, that's good.
How did you warm up the bottle? I'm really so curious about the mechanisms at play here.
There we go. Don't know if you heard that.
Good.
Did you?
Yep.
Oh dear. How do I warm up the bottle? So what you do is, if you're like us and you're incredibly lazy, you buy one of these machines. It's a bit like a coffee machine.
Is it like the Baby Keurig or whatever?
It's
Baby Brezza.
Again, I don't know the brand, and it is new. I have no excuse this time.
What you need to know about me is we've been trying for a baby for 2 years,
Oh, right.
and I've spent these 2 years researching everything anyone has ever made for babies. Because I don't have the energy, I don't have the need to spend my energy on an actual baby.
Sure.
I spend it on learning all the terms and the tools.
Right.
So that's why I'm like, which of these 5 bouncers that I saw on YouTube last week is this?
It's got stars on it, if that helps narrow it down.
I know it's not a baby Bjorn.
No, I could probably, if I was really, shall I look down for it? I'll have a look.
No, it's fine.
Well,
it's fine.
I feel like I need to
Do
now.
parents listen to this?
I
hope so.
think so. I don't know. Actually, one
out.
definitely does, because we met her in an NCT group. What's up, Tori, if you're listening?
Hi, Tori. Being a parent is not easy right now, huh?
Oh, I don't want to really spend the last 5-10 minutes of this podcast moaning about it.
Just going down that route. But I'll just say that
hard.
One of my friends who has 2 kids told me, if I'd known that there's a possibility of not having nursery in school, I wouldn't have had kids. I was like, okay.
Yeah, well, I'm not quite there yet. Yeah, but I saw a tweet there's a political journalisty guy called Alex Andreo, and he was taking the mick out of his friends who were parents, and he was saying, like, at the beginning of lockdown, so it's it's a scary time, all these nurseries closing left, right, and centre, and he put this thing out saying, all my friends with kids seem to be really shocked that they're having to spend time with their children. And they're like, what, I have to spend every day with them? Like, or like all the hours? And I was like, it kind of pissed me off. I was like, Yeah, because we've got fucking
Because you
jobs.
have
Like,
other things to do.
yeah,
Exactly. I mean, wouldn't it be great to live in a country where at her age you would have had a year off,
amazing. Yeah,
right?
and
And not just not had to worry about having a job? Of course.
I've heard
So maybe Mr. Who is it again?
Alexandreo.
So Mr. Alexandreo, why don't you try feeding a child while doing a podcast and planning your next workday? And
What?
then we can talk.
Yeah, while like the worst is like the boardroom calls, like when you're trying, like you're
Mm.
talking to a CEO, head of
Hmm.
product, and your other like senior front end developers, and you're trying to explain why something isn't going to be on time or
Yeah.
like over deadline, and
Yeah.
then in the background you've got your 4-year-old going like, "Daddy,
Yeah.
can you wipe my bum?" You're just like, "Oh
Yeah.
Lord."
Our CEO had to speak with a CEO of a large corporation in a very tender moment in our relationship with that company while physically running
Really?
to his daughter's school to pick her up because he was late.
Yeah,
And he managed to have that call with a favorable outcome, get to the school, and
yeah,
then his daughter said, "Daddy, you're late, and also where's my snack?"
fair. Yeah,
And so, which is important to her.
yeah, absolutely.
But you just can't win when you're trying to do multiple jobs.
Yeah, not a 100% success then on his part.
I think he does great. He's a wonderful dad. And that's the best that we can do. I mean, no one should be expected to have to juggle 24/7. That's why we have I mean,
Mm,
I don't want to get into politics, but I can imagine what party that chap voted for. We have we have things like nurseries for a reason.
mm,
It's
yeah,
because we have working parents that
I think
participate in the economy.
that's the thing that irks me about it is he's like a super progressive guy. Like
Mm,
normally he's all about Remain, very Labour votey.
right.
Yeah, it just I don't
Okay,
know.
we all have bad days, but I think blaming people, individuals in
Mm,
society for having hardships is a
yeah,
little bit mean during a world pandemic, but we'll
yeah.
let him go with that one.
Maybe he was having a tough time.
I think a lot of people on Twitter are having a tough time.
Yeah, I think so. I've tried to sort of step back from it a little bit recently because but there's times when I read the news and I'm just like, oh, well, this is fucking ridiculous. And then I end up like, let's say it's like 7:15 in the morning. My son has woken me up. I'm trying to sort Ruby out with some milk or something,
Yeah.
and then I read the news and something just like gets my gut, like really
Yeah.
angers me because I'm just like,
Yeah.
how can this person be so fucking detached?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I'll like write like a sort of 15 or 20 tweet thread about it
Yeah.
and I'll think to myself, yeah, I've really nailed that point. And then I'll post it, and then like 2 days later, I'll see it there, and I'll be like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Like, how long did that take me?
Yeah. We ran to friends for a reason. I think sometimes you just need to let it out and there's value in that. But I think when you create like a anthology of all of your pissed off moments and you look back, it begins to just make you question, you know,
Yeah,
is this my best self right now, you know?
yeah. I'd like to sort of develop
Oh.
a similar attitude to it as I do with Facebook now, where like there's about 2 or 3 guys on my Facebook who relentlessly troll and comment back and
Uh-huh.
mock anything to do with like being Remainy and being
Right.
anti-Brexit. But I've actually been pretty good with that. Like over the last 2 or 3 months, I've got to the point where I'm like, I literally like it is just a waste of my time. Or
I
like
call it the post-Brexit Zen.
there is a zen
We've
to it.
lost.
Yeah,
We just need to move on.
it's like it's over. Let's just yeah,
It's fine. It's fine. We don't need to sell cheese to Europe. It's fine.
yeah, it'll be alright. I mean, as heartless and as callous as this sounds, there is a little part of me that's a bit like,
Don't say it. Oh, no.
what did you think I was going to say?
We ain't
This
doing
could be
this.
juicy.
Tell me. I don't know. I read some of your tweets about patriotism today.
Oh
I was
right.
wondering.
Oh no, actually, this is way worse.
Okay.
I was going to say there is a part of me that's a bit like, yeah, but we work in tech. It'll be all right. It's,
Oh, yeah,
you
okay. I
know,
thought
we're going to be,
I thought you were gonna be like, a part of me is like, well, Britain is better
no,
than
no.
everyone else.
I'm sure,
Only at vaccines, and only if you don't count Israel and Qatar.
right.
Is it Qatar?
Yeah.
I'm so bad.
That's like
Is it Bahrain? Oh
patriotism
gosh,
squared.
I'm so sorry to anyone from those countries.
I feel like,
Uh,
like, maybe I didn't get my point across, but like, my point wasn't like, yeah, let's all get all patriotic. My point is like, there's a lot of really nationalistic fucking idiots in this country, and the last 3 or 4 elections kind of prove that. So if it helps Labour get into power by just having a flag behind Keir Starmer every now and then, and basically not demonising people who do wave flags, then
yeah,
maybe that's the route they need to go. Is like, be a little bit more
yeah.
pro Britain, and then get in power, and then you have an opportunity to kind of
To
change
tell them you
things.
lied. No, I think
Yeah,
as a UX designer, my job is to listen to people without judgment. I truly have to. It doesn't matter what people tell me.
mm,
Even if I design something for 2 months and I love it, and they tell me this is absolute shit, I have to tell them how much I agree with them, how wonderful they are, and how much they're helping me.
mm,
And while it sounds like a horrible deal, it's actually something that really teaches you to really listen and to you have to put yourself in the shoes of the other person.
mm,
Otherwise, you can't survive because you constantly think you're surrounded by idiots and you can't help them because you judge them.
mm,
So you have to really think, if I were this person and I had the same exact life story that they did, and I went through all the same steps in my life, would I have a different outcome? Would I think differently? Would I take different actions? And I think if you think that way, a lot of the time you may realize, well, actually, I'm not sure,
mm,
or maybe even probably not. And I think when it comes to things like patriotism and nationalism, if we take it down to its bare bones, we know that as humans, our natural instinct is to belong and to be social and to be part of a group and to be validated. I mean, hell, all day we've been talking about imposter syndrome and thinking we're absolute shit.
sure.
And the way that you overcome that largely is by being accepted and by being praised or validated and feeling like you belong to a prosperous, beautiful group of people that happens to have a flag and a song,
Mm,
and a very nice old lady that we pay a lot of money to, then we can all understand that. I mean, it's not ludicrous to want to belong. It's not ludicrous to want to be proud of something that you're part of.
mm,
I think it's the actions that stem from that and the division that can stem from that that bothers all of us. So yeah, I absolutely don't think we should judge people and exclude them and expel them from who we deem to be logical or worthy of our time. That's just my UX view.
sure.
Separately, and after a few tequilas, I can tell you my personal view.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, Jenny. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to have to go and change a very pooey nappy.
Yes. And what will you do with Ruby after?
She's going straight in her little sleepy and then out like a light, I'm sure. We're super lucky.
I was just insinuating it was your pooey nappy, but I
Oh,
didn't
I'm
do
sorry,
it
that
very
went straight over
well.
my head. I mean,
That's fine.
I might have a pooey nappy, I don't know. Just,
That's, do you know what? Sometimes on a video call, I have considered getting an adult diaper,
what if it goes on
and
too
that's
long?
what we'll leave it at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair. I hadn't even considered
You
that.
just need to have a poker face
Yeah,
when you do it.
I like it. I mean, let me just say this now, that sometimes I'm in here, I'll record a podcast, and if it goes over like an hour and I'm having
You
a
have a
couple
bottle.
of beers or whatever, it does get a bit uncomfortable. And frankly, some sort of adult nappy, you've planted a seed in my head.
Yeah. I got it from Grey's Anatomy. One of the characters wore diapers to a 16-hour surgery. And why not?
I like it. Big fan. Big fan.
I mean, do I have one on now? How will you ever know?
That's one of the unfortunate restrictions of Skype, I'm afraid, that I will never know. All right. Thank you so much.
So, cheers to empathy and to mystery.
Yeah.